We're going to be doing some activities, so hopefully you've had a chance to pull together some of the materials that Kate had sent out to you ahead of time. So Sherry and I are thrilled to be here today and to have an opportunity to connect with all of you and talk and learn about culture change. So when we were first asked about coming and speaking today, Kate had mentioned that much of the focus would be on sort of the early stages. So how do you get started? And so, I think we're gathering from today that a lot of folks have actually probably already started on their journeys, but perhaps there's been some frost. Or you just have some new team members that have come on board. And so we're going to spend a lot of our time focusing on that early stage, or opportunities where you have to kind of come back and re-energize as a team. So what we want to do today in the hour that we have is to first tell you a little bit about the Partnerships in Dementia Care Alliance, or PiDC Alliance, and how the approach that we've used to culture change. And then to have you, give you an opportunity to experience the dawn of a culture change process. And so we're going to have you do that by having you think about your own organizations and who the champions might be that you can pull together for your culture change process, or who else you might need to pull in, to look at how you can build strong collaborative relationships, and to give you a chance to do some comparing and contrasting of different approaches to living. So the PiDC Alliance is a research network, and it's focused really on enhancing the care and experiences related to dementia. And so we're trying to do that for all involved in the care of individuals with dementia, so individuals themselves, family members, and staff, both health-related staff and health staff from other organizations. So we've been doing this work in long-term care homes, but also community care settings. And our ultimate goal is really to enhance that care experience. So we've got a number of specific goals, but really we're trying to enhance that care experience overall. So our approach in doing this research has involved participatory action research, where we're getting all partners involved right from the beginning and involving them all the way through our process. And then using the 5 phases of appreciative inquiry. So we start with dawn, which is really that building of relationships, gathering the team together and building those relationships. Moving on to discovery, so finding the best of what is through gathering stories and sharing those stories, and we've talked a lot about storytelling today. Thinking about what the ideal long-term care home would be like, so dreaming. Designing, which involves putting a plan together to make that dream a reality. And then delivery, where you actually go ahead and work together with your teams to implement those changes. So they're presented here in a linear fashion, but they're not necessarily linear at all. And so we're going to focus today on dawn, and that's something, again, that you might have to continue to revisit as team members change and as things happen in your organizations. So before we get going with a couple of different activities, we just wanted to draw your attention to our website. And so you have, I'm not sure if you actually have it, but we can always share it with you, the link, to make it easier for you to access. But there's 2 parts of the website that we wanted to make you aware of. So the first is a new section that we've just added, and it's called Getting Started with Culture Change. So that's for individuals or organizations that are new to this process, and they want to learn more about what is culture change, and what is it, what's required, what would I need to do, and what time might be required of me. So it just gives them a bit of an overview before they really kind of decide to get into things. And then we have our living toolkit, so the Culture Change Living Toolkit. And that provides much more detailed information about culture change, and specifically using the appreciative inquiry process. And there's lots of tools and strategies and templates that are available there for you to use. And so we're going to be using a few of those today in our activities. And so we encourage you to just go to the website and just take anything you want from there. And hopefully you'll find it useful. So we're going to start with Dawn. And so again, the focus of Dawn is really on building relationships and building capacity. And so we're going to be looking at how we pull different individuals, the key stakeholders, together to form our culture change coalitions, which is what we've called it at Schlegel. It's the village advisory teams, to look at how you can start to develop those strong, trusting relationships, and to see what skills and resources team members have, and see what other resources they might need as we move forward. And this dawning piece is a really essential part of culture change, because if you know, as people have talked about today, culture change is not easy. It's difficult. And in order to be able to really critically look at what it is that you're doing, you need a strong, solid team to be open and honest with each other. And so that's why you need to spend the time that's required in the dawn phase to enable that to happen.
So we're going to sort of help you to experience some of the things that we do with our culture change coalitions, and some of those people are actually in this room today who have been involved in one of our processes, which is kind of cool. And what we're going to do is just help you experience what we go through during that process. Some of you have been through these processes, so we'd love to hear the types of things that you do during your processes as well. So we're going to start with building the Culture Change Coalition, and that is, we think of this as the champions who are really going to be the relational caring mentors within the organization to really facilitate that change process. So you will find on the tables, and some of you may want to join tables together so that you can work together. What we'd like you to do is to think about all the people who play a role in the lives of persons living with dementia or older adults in your organization or your care context, whether it's a community setting or a long-term care setting. Who are the people who are surrounding people living with dementia or older adults? Use the Post-it notes on your tables to identify all those different important groups of individuals, people in the organization that you think you need to identify as being important for supporting people living with dementia and older adults. Putting one group per Post-it. And then we're going to have you work together with the markers and the paper on your tables to actually use this information to create a visual representation or image of all the groups that support people living with dementia and older adults in your organization, and show the connections between all those groups. So we're going to give you about 10 minutes for this, and then we're going to come back and see what you came up with. This was just meant to give you a little bit of a taste of some of the things we do. Anyway, let's have a few share. And they're already.
Hope and light for everyone. The person with dementia is in the middle, and the ornaments are around the tree, connected by the tinsel. The ornaments are, I can't see it there, doctors, volunteers, PSWs, caregivers, therapists, youth. What was that one there? Family members, nurses, peers, social worker. There's your tree.
Okay, so Sarah online says the individual with dementia, the PSWs, nurses, housekeepers, dietary, physio, doctors, recreation, there you go, family, friends, we all play a role, and it's important that we can all come together to help our residents. So if they were to give us an image, it would take a village, is what Sarah was saying.
So we've included a lot of what's already been mentioned, but we also brought in our educators, we brought in our community support, so our those coming in for companionship and extra care. Who else? Our volunteers, students that are coming in, physio. We had some other good ones, ministry, CCAC, corporate. It really encompasses everyone, and we've put it on a mountain because we said that we're continually climbing in our journey, and we really will never ever get to the top of it. And so there's going to be rocks along the way, there's going to be bumps, there may even be a boulder that comes down. But if you want to go to the top, and here's some residents walking along the journey with us.
And great scenery along the way.
That's right.
Thank you. One more.
Hello. So we did a sky with the resident being the sun in the middle, because they're always the reason we're here and they make our day. And the clouds are kind of some days are nice and clear, other days they're kind of stormy clouds.
And the little birds, I know, great artwork here. None of us are rec. The birds are people that kind of fly in and help out when needed.
So in our separate clouds, we kind of split them up. So we have the fun cloud, which is hairdresser, music, dog therapy, entertainment, rec, the YMCA, because they can go swimming over there, the horticulture, students, and volunteers. We also have the chaplain and social work, which kind of got their own cloud because they just touch all of us. Then we have family, friends, other residents' families that have roles, as well as other residents. We have our NC and RI, our support office, leadership, and the RIA. And then we have more of the clinical aspect, which has nursing, PSWs, housekeeping, maintenance, kind of the day-to-day function.
Yeah. And then in that same cloud, we have the PERT and BSO team, CAC, and what was the other one that you said? Oh, and labs. Yeah. Good job.
So what we would then do with our groups after they have created their mapping of their organization and all the people connected to the organization, we would ask people to reflect on if anyone was missing from that diagram, and we would ask them then, who are the champions? Who are the people that really are energized, passionate people, good relationship-centered people who would actually, that you want to invite to be involved as relational caring mentors from the beginning? Who are the people we need to get around the table to lead the change? And we have some conversations around that and start inviting people to come and work with us on culture change. And we try to continue to go back to this to sort of say, okay, whose voices are missing at the table as we keep bringing people together, so that to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to be engaged. Once we do that and have people coming together, we start to explore what we need to be able to work well together, and that's to develop really strong relationships where we trust each other, we feel where we can say, be honest with each other, because doing the critical reflection work that's required for culture change takes a lot of courage, but it also means that you really have to be honest about what's working and what's not, and what's consistent with the culture change values and what's not. So we then might take our group through an exercise like this. So I'd like you all to close your eyes.
Online too.
Online too. All right. So I want you all to think about a time when you felt good in relationship with another person or living thing. As you imagine that time, I want you to go there. Who is with you? Who is there? What are you doing? What are you feeling right now? What is it that makes that relationship a good one for you? So I want you to stay there for a moment. Now I'd like you to open your eyes, and with the person sitting next to you, so in pairs, I'd like you to share with one other person what a caring relationship means to you based on what you just saw in your image. Would anyone like to share what a really quality relationship was for you?
So the story I shared with my group here was my grandpa was living with dementia, and the last time he remembered my name. So I was sitting on his bed with him in his long-term care home, and we were singing songs or whatever, and he looked at me, he's like, Janelle, I love you so much. And he knew my name, which was huge, because most of the time it was just kid or doll. And I just said to them, like, it was such an amazing feeling. And that night I was actually introducing him to a PSW we had hired privately to take care of him because he kept falling out of bed and whatnot. And he looked at her and he's like, you know, this granddaughter of mine, she's a pain in my ass. And I just laughed because it's like, there he is, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
Beautiful story. Beautiful story. Thank you. Anyone else want to share?
So at our table, we didn't actually share the stories or the memory, but we talked about the feelings of a comfortable relationship and what made it feel. And both Mitzi and I said silence. When it's not that awkward silence, when it's comfortable silence and it feels good, that is a deep connection and a good relationship.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yes. Anyone else? Is there anyone online who wanted to share? No? All right. So what you talked about at your tables and what you shared with your partners, what might that tell us about what others might need from us in relationship? Anyone? Yes.
Well, what we found at our table is that basically we all want the same thing. So trust was something that came up today, and trust is something that's the foundation. And so they're just like us, our residents. That's what they want as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So trust. Often the things that we want in relationship are the same things that others want as well. Someone? Sammy? Oh, Marlene.
Listening and a specific focus on the other person.
Yes. Listening, being present with the other. Anyone else? That's all right. Don't have to go to the gym tonight.
What I've learned is I like flexibility in relationships too, not just to stick with the same thing, to be able to do different things and be flexible.
Yes. Flexibility, so important.
I think the theme at our table is pretty common as well, and it was all about giving. Relationships and being about giving and putting out effort. All of us had, I guess, a different theme or person that was kind of showcased in that thought there, but everything remained the same in the end. That it was all about giving of yourself to another.
Thank you. Giving. And that reciprocity, right? In terms of we want people to be present and give for us, but we also need to be able to do that with others. So what we would normally do with this activity is to have people use it as a way to talk about and develop principles about how we're going to create a safe space to work together. So we would use our understandings, our shared understandings about what a quality relationship is to each of us to really develop those principles about how we're going to work together.
And then as part of that, we would have some other conversations as well. So thinking about some of these things, and we won't go into detail, but just that idea about what are the goals and expectations of the group that's working on this culture change journey. So getting that to be very clear right from the start, looking at roles and responsibilities, and identifying the strengths and the resources and talents that each individual around the table brings, because we all bring different strengths. So what are those strengths that we can utilize through the process, and what else do we need? What other supports and resources might this team need to be able to move forward? So those are some of the other things that we would have conversations about, again, as we start to build this team.
After we've start to develop relationships, and relationship building is really part of the entire journey. We're continuing to build and strengthen and nurture those relationships and bring more people into the fold. The further up the mountain we get in the culture change journey. The other thing that I think we need to be really clear on is that everyone understands the culture change values and the vision, the values that are actually going to inform where we want to go with the organization. And I think others here today have talked about this. So we do this in a number of different ways. The one way that we're going to have you experience is we've created a table that you will find in your packages, and it's called Moving from a Medical Institutional Model to a Community Relational Approach. Activity number 3. And it looks like this. In your small groups or at your tables, what we'd like you to do is read through the items under the institutional medical model and then the relational caring approach, and identify what you as a team believe to be the very key differences between the two approaches. And what you will do with that then is use those key differences to start to create values that can guide your culture change process. So fill the following statement in. We are striving to become a culture that values what? Okay, so identify together what is exciting or energizing about the relational caring approach that's very different from the medical approach, and then start to create your values together. What did you see were some of the key differences between the two approaches?
We thought our values would be close relationships, to promote those, to promote personhood, to promote individuality, diversity, and a focus on what we can do as opposed to what we should not be doing.
Anyone else? Key differences between the two approaches?
You can breathe in the culture one.
You can breathe in the culture one. Yes. Any other?
So we had a number of differences or values, I guess, that came out of it. One was working on an individually versus teamwork, this idea of trust, and also resident empowerment kind of underpins the social model where it is compromised in the institutional model. Deep relationships thrive in the social model where they are compromised in the institutional model. Personhood and purposeful living thrives in the social model. In the social model, one we added that's not on the list I wanted to include is the language we use is a language of living in the social model, and it's a language of professionalism in the medical model. And the example Marlene offered was, I was admitted to long-term care as a medical professional language. I moved in yesterday is a language of living.
We hope some of you would see the difference between the language used in the first column and language specifically used in the second column. They're very different because the language of a relational community model is very different. And thank you for pointing that out, Marlene and Josie. Than the medical model that we're used to. So these are the culture change values, and you've picked up a lot of them already. Most of you already know these already. This is the culture that we're working towards, a culture that supports choice and self-determination for everybody within the organization, right? Staff should have the choice to be able to care in the moment in the ways that residents and older adults and people with dementia need them to do. Of course, maintaining dignity and respect, nurturing body, mind, and spirit, knowing and focusing on the person, and that's residents, persons with dementia, older adults, family members, staff, visitors. Living life to the fullest should be our goal, not servicing illness. Supporting continuing abilities, gifts, talents, and aspirations. And I thank the team from Erin Meadows for coming and sharing your wonderful story, because I'm going to use it all the time, because it's a beautiful example of how you nurture this incredible ability and skill in terms of teaching. And so David, I'm going to be we're going to use your story all the time, and I hope that's okay. Oh, royalties. Creating, enabling, normalizing environments that actually look and feel like home rather than institutions are the F word. Building close interdependent relationships. Prioritizing collaborative decision making. Who's involved in your decision making in the home? And if it tends to be managers and leaders, then you're not doing culture change, I would suggest, or we would suggest. And offering flexibility, somebody suggested that just in terms of friendship and relationships, right? But flexibility is really important in terms of creating that sort of normalizing way of living that we all have in our lives, right?
And so, like we talked about with the last last activity, there's some other issues that as a group you might also want to explore. So, for example, looking at having more of a problem-focused approach versus an appreciative approach. And so we're a little bit biased, and we think the appreciative approach is a better one. And especially in long-term care, where the sector as a whole tends to get sort of beat up quite a bit, in the media and so on. There's a lot of negativity. So I think we've found that having more of an appreciative approach is much more effective, and I think valued by all of the staff and families and residents. And so thinking about the different phases of appreciative inquiry, as Sherry mentioned, how decisions are made. How are you going to make those decisions, and how are you going to involve all the voices that you need to involve? And then thinking about sharing information. That communication piece is so important, not only within your group, but with the whole organization. So how are you going to share information, bring information in and share information out? And that's sometimes where things can also fall down. So in terms of our top 3 recommendations, so involving all partners right from the very beginning. So including residents or individuals with dementia, families, and staff at all levels. We need to have all of their voices at the table right from the very beginning as we move through this journey. Spending the time to develop and foster those relationships. It's so important. As we talked about, it's difficult, right? Culture change is difficult, so we need those good, strong relationships in order to do important, effective work. And then to continue to reflect on and use the culture change values to guide your work. So if you're stuck, or if you're in a position where you're not quite sure where to go, often reflecting on the values can be helpful, right? Can help us determine how to go forward. So just there is the website for the toolkit. So again, please go ahead and use them. And I think we have hopefully a couple of minutes for questions.
Thank you, Carrie and Sherry. I was wondering if you could expand upon, in the appreciative inquiry process, the new phase of dawn for the group.
So we started out using appreciative inquiry back in probably 2009, 2010, and when we started out, we actually didn't start with dawn because it wasn't part of the appreciative inquiry process that we were using at the time and drawing on. And what we found is without building those relationships, we really, it was very challenging to move forward. And so we stopped and critically reflected and sort of said, wait a minute, there's a really important piece missing from appreciative inquiry that we need to start to, or really need to spend some time on. And so we developed what is called Dawn as a place where we could actually do all that relationship building and really make sure that everyone knew that we were on the same page. The other thing we found when we started the work, because a lot of our work has focused on dementia, is that there's a lot of assumptions around the abilities of people living with dementia. And so we needed to stop and do a lot of work that really started to challenge some of those assumptions and have people really reflect in a very deep way about the assumptions that they held and how that might be informing their practice. And so one of the activities we could have done today, which we have done with our groups, is use quotes from people with dementia about how they've been treated, how people relate to them, and how that makes them feel. And we actually reflect around those quotes, and it really helps to bring out a lot of assumptions people have. So thank you, Jessica. But appreciative inquiry, if you go and do some research on it now, they actually have identified a first phase, but we might have got there first.
So there was just one comment online about the website URL. So Kate has said that she would be willing to send that out afterwards. So the folks online and in the room, you can have that if you don't want to write down the long one.
We'd love to hear too from some of you who have been engaging in culture change, the way that you got started and what you would consider to be important phases that you used in what we call Dawn. So I'm not sure if anyone would like to share some of your own experiences about what worked for you.
So I think in the Schlegel Village's culture change journey and in the guidebooks that are out on the table outside, we actually have a first phase called, or our first step of 9, called laying the foundation. And I think that's very similar to what you're talking about in terms of Dawn. I think Al, when he talked about warming the soil, was talking about the dawn phase. There was another presentation this morning where the group spent the whole first year creating a foundation for culture change and building an understanding of where we want to get to, the destination, and that was Pat Morden and her group in Grey County. That, in my mind, is also part of that relationship building and Dawn. So I think we're all doing it, but calling it slightly different things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think just to feed on what Josie was saying, another part, I was in one of the villages when we started this journey with Schlegel Villages, and it was really also making team members and residents and all those stakeholders aware of little things that they were already doing to promote culture change, because I think it was scary and it's unknown, and so little things that were said or little things that were done, it was great to identify, to say, that is part of culture change. We didn't do that, 5 years ago or even last year. And so, kind of almost making a list of the little things that you're doing along the way, because people want culture change to be this, all of a sudden we're living a new culture, and the reality is that's not going to happen. It's little steps along the way. And so creating, I would say, in your home, to create a list of the little things that you're doing, because as new team members come on, they don't know the changes that have already been made. So they're kind of like, well, I don't think you guys are doing a great job with culture change. And it's, well, let me tell you a story, because 5 years ago, this is where we were and this is where we are now. And so identifying.
Yeah, that's excellent.
So if I just say one quick thing, I think the other thing that's really important with that is that it's also celebrating what they're doing. So it's not like you weren't doing this before. Yeah. You have been, but let's celebrate that and let's acknowledge the good work that's already happening, and then let's build on it.
A couple little procedural things which I'm sure you're intuitively doing, but just to point up also, one idea is, once again, sort of a code of ethics or safe space guidelines, so people have an agreement at the beginning when the different people who haven't worked together come together. How are we going to relate to each other? How are we going to respect each other's opinions? Those types of things, and just having something that everybody agrees to and can be reminded of when you meet. It just helps reduce some of the negative interactions. And the other thing is that, and we did the similar thing when I was at St. John's. We started our culture change journey. We went across the board with different people from different parts of the organization. And so we had people like who had a PSW job or a housekeeping job who were living the values already, but they had never been in the leadership meeting. They'd never lectured or taught other people. And so they didn't automatically start speaking out. And so once again, using techniques like the Learning Circle really empowered people and helped them become much more confident about speaking up and giving their opinions.
Thank you, Al. Yeah, one of the things that we do with our teams is have them do appreciative inquiry interviews with each other on a fairly regular basis, where they actually identify the types of things that you're talking about. What have we seen this week or this month that actually aligns with one of our culture change values? And then when they share that, sometimes team members on other neighborhoods or in other areas in the organization haven't seen that, right? So it's a wonderful way for them to share information and celebrate the wonderful things that they're doing. And I think we're done.